Video games date back to the 1950s, and since then there have been hundreds and hundreds of video games that have been planned, conceived, designed, built, and ultimately never released. These are just 5 video games that I would have really loved if they were, but unfortunately they weren't. They never were. They never actually made it to an official release. First up, we have RoboCop vs. Terminator for the NES, a game that honestly probably shouldn't have ever existed, and it's good that it didn't exist considering how it was looking at the time of development. This game was to be typical of past RoboCop games, with a controllable RoboCop that shoots in all directions and runs and jumps their way through various levels, climbing ladders along pipes, while avoiding sewer sludge and destroying force fields. At the end of levels, you'll find bosses from the Terminator range of games. Greg Tavares was assigned to the NES conversion of RoboCop vs. Terminator, and in 1998 he spoke out about the game. He said, "It was a very bad game. The artist couldn't deal very well with the limits of the NES, so it looked very bad, and the designer was a recently promoted playtester, and he didn't really know what he was doing." And he was certainly right. The game didn't look very great, it didn't play any different to any of the other RoboCop games, and the music wasn't that great either. The game was never gonna be a hit. So unfortunately that game didn't look like it was ever gonna be any good. In fact, it just looked like an even worse version of the RoboCop games we did have for the NES. So maybe it's a good thing that never happened, but RoboCop vs. Terminator, that concept is really cool, and I've really always loved RoboCop and Terminator growing up, and I know that as a kid I would have forgiven that game through all its glitches, through all its bugs, no matter how bad it looked. When I was 10 years old, I would have played the heck out of that game regardless, so I kind of wish it had been made, but probably good for the rest of the world that it wasn't. So we had Pokemon X and we had Pokemon Y, but whatever happened to Pokemon Z? Was that ever actually even a thing, or was it just rumors made up by gamers? In 2013, Pokemon Z was a hot topic, right after Pokemon X and Pokemon Y was released. Around that time, Pokemon fans were ecstatic to know the status of Pokemon Z. According to rumors, Nintendo was supposedly going to unveil the much anticipated Pokemon title in February 2013. On the contrary, the game's publisher reportedly shifted its plan and no longer intended to release Pokemon Z. This move by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company was said to give way for Pokemon Sun and Moon, which have since been released. So more than likely it was something that was maybe thought about by Nintendo, but I doubt it was ever actually going to happen. My best guess at the time was that Pokemon Z was going to be released for the Wii U. I always thought, I still think, Nintendo is really missing out on a huge market. They have this portable device on their Nintendo systems now that could so easily just be a Pokédex. An awesome, realistic looking, open world Pokemon game, Skyrim style, but with Pokemon in the world, where you have your Pokédex in your hand and you're going around catching, battling, and finding Pokemon with your Pokédex. I don't know, there's something about that that's always excited me. Since the Wii U was announced, I thought that was 100% gonna be a thing, so I was probably one of the ones attributing to the Pokemon Z rumors, because I definitely thought that was gonna happen, but unfortunately, it probably never will. This next one is the one that hurts me the most. Honestly, out of any game that I've ever actually been super excited for that ended up being cancelled, this one hurt me the most, and that is Alan Wake 2. In 2010, the original Alan Wake, published by Microsoft, hit the Xbox 360. It showed that episodic gaming can be compelling when released as a package, that narrative was important in video games, and that violence and gore aren't the only way to scare in an interactive experience. It sold more than 3.2 million copies, and its story concluded with a confounding cliffhanger that launched many theories. It felt like Alan Wake 2 was coming. Remedy even created a functioning internal prototype, but then the game, like its fictional protagonist, simply vanished. The thing that sucks is that we all waited like 8 years for the first Alan Wake, and then it finally came out. So when there was rumors of a sequel, you had this hope that eventually, 8 years later, maybe that game would come out. But it's pretty much been done and dusted at this point, is not actually happening, and we got teased so much. We got teased with so much Alan Wake 2 talk, we got teased with trailers, we got teased with demos, we got teased with a mini sequel coming out after the game, we got teased with extra chapters coming out on Alan Wake to finish the initial game. The universe and the world that Alan Wake built was so rich, and they could have done so much with it, and they never actually ended up doing it. And then they switched to Quantum Break. When they released Quantum Break, they released Alan Wake as a DLC digital that you could download for the system. I actually made a video about that at the time, because I thought, why would you do that? Why would you release an older game 5 years, 6 years later on a newer system unless you were trying to build up for a possible sequel? But I guess in reality, they just wanted to give more content for their new game to warrant more people going out and buying it, which is very unfortunate. And Alan Wake 2 will always be something that I wish I had, and I am still hopeful for, but it diminishes every year. Now, this next one is one that I'm sure a lot of you were probably expecting to see on this list and wondering if I was going to put on this list, but I have a really interesting history with this game and with this series, and that is Silent Hills. Silent Hills is a cancelled survival horror video game that was under development by Kojima Productions for PlayStation 4. Directed by Hideo Kojima, it was the 9th main installment in the Silent Hill series. Kojima was brought onto the project in summer 2012 by Konami. The game was announced in August 2014 via PT, short for Playable Teaser, a critically acclaimed demo that was released as a free download for the PlayStation Store. PT revealed the involvement of Del Toro along with Norman Reedus as the voice and appearance of its protagonist. The game's development was questioned due to rumors surrounding Kojima's work with the completion of Metal Gear Solid 5 and his eventual exit from Konami. In April 2015, reports surfaced from Del Toro that Silent Hills had been cancelled, with Konami officially confirming the cancellation shortly after, a move which was negatively received by critics and fans of the franchise. Kojima, Del Toro, and Reedus eventually teamed up for the upcoming Death Stranding. Now, this is so fresh and so recent and so in the public eye that I'm sure everyone knows the story behind this and exactly what happened with this game and why it got cancelled. So without diving into it too much, I'll talk more about my personal experience with this. When I grew up, I was more of a Resident Evil kid than a Silent Hill kid, and Resident Evil scared me enough as it was, so I never really dived into that. But then when the whole PT demo came out, it was a huge thing. It blew up, and yet somehow managed to stay secret as to what it was. So I played it with my friend Eric, not knowing what to expect, and I was scared absolutely shitless. But the game itself, the demo itself, was so entertaining, so well done. It looked fantastic, and it really did mind screw you. And for the first time ever, I was excited for a Silent Hill game, and that was just fantastic marketing. That game had such great marketing, such great build up, and at that point, you had to make that game. You were getting people like myself who weren't really into horror games, that weren't really into the series, back into horror games or into horror games and wanting to play one and wanting to pick one up. That game would have done really well, and that was a really dumb move on Konami's part to screw that up. Fortunately, we still have Kojima and Norman Reedus teaming up to make Death Stranding, so it's not like we're getting nothing out of this deal, but that was just a really dumb move on Konami's part, and it's a shame that it's not officially part of the Silent Hill series, but maybe this is better. And finally, we have another game that hurt me deep inside when I heard this was being cancelled, along with the fact that LucasArts in general was getting cancelled and getting wiped off the face of the earth. LucasArts gave me a lot of my favorite games growing up as a kid, and a game they almost gave me as an adult was Star Wars 1313. Or 1313, I'm not sure how you're supposed to say it. 1313? There's a lot of ways you could say that. Star Wars 1313 is a cancelled action-adventure video game that was under development by LucasArts. The game would take a more mature, gritty direction compared to past Star Wars video games, and like 2002 Star Wars Bounty Hunter, would emphasize fast-paced gadget and weapon-based combat using tools exclusively to bounty hunters rather than the Force and lightsaber-based combat. On April 3rd, 2013, it was announced that the Walt Disney Company had ceased internal development of all LucasArts projects, including Star Wars 1313. A LucasArts representative indicated that the game may be revived through a licensing deal with an outside studio, but until then, Star Wars 1313 remains on hold. Growing up, I loved Star Wars games. I loved playing Jedi Academy, I loved playing Star Wars Old Republic, I loved playing the Rogue Squadron games, and even as we moved on, I loved playing Force Awakens was really fun. I just loved Star Wars games, but it felt like for a while, nothing had really come out that was exciting me too much. Oh, and remember Bounty Hunter for the GameCube and PlayStation 2 and Xbox? That was a really fun game. That's an underrated game in my opinion. But growing up, I felt like nothing really too exciting had happened in the Star Wars universe. And then I heard about Star Wars 1313 and I was really excited. The game was going to be based around Boba Fett and his story, and that was exciting for me too, because again, Bounty Hunter was a game that I really enjoyed. I was excited for this. I was really excited to see the direction of this game, how this game was going to play out, and I really wanted to play it. And LucasArts honestly doesn't really ever let me down. And then it was cancelled, never to be, and we're still waiting to find out if that game's ever going to get picked up by anyone ever again, or if that's just done. And I honestly, at this point, my hopes are gone. I'm pretty sure that game is just done. And now we've got Star Wars Battlefront though. We got that. We have that unfinished game. That's fun for like an hour. And that's my top 5 games that weren't. They're my personal games. I want to say my personal favorite games, but they're my personal saddest moments in gaming that I can think of. I almost put Star Fox 2 on this list, but I didn't even know about that growing up, that was ever going to be a thing. I found out later on and was bummed out. Yeah, I think those are the times I was upset the most by games that were going to come out and then didn't come out. But let me know down below what games you were excited for that have been canceled, because there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that we could go into, and I want to know what yours were down below. Let's collectively share the pain of games we never got to play. But I appreciate you watching this video. If you liked it, remember to hit that like button, leave that comment down below, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. And at the end of all my videos, I am so thirsty. I don't know why I can't talk for 5 minutes without feeling like I'm about to dehydrate. Make sure to check out some other videos on my channels, guys. I'll catch you later. Some good Canadian water.
On this episode of The Game Quest, Wood, Scott, Katie, Aaron, Ricky, Billy, Jay, Grimsy, and D and Dave all converge at Retropalooza in Texas.
To see how the Australian handles some Texas alcohol.
You had to have paid more than 85 for that.
I was like, yeah, sure, bull. You did not get those for $85.
Awesome!